There's not one right or wrong way to do, anti-trafficking work, but it's never rooted in like, look at me, I'm the hero.
Suzanne Whitehead has been working with human trafficking victims on and off for 14 years.
I care a lot about making sure that everything I do is honest.
That's why she's one of 9 people who have filed lawsuits against Tim Ballard and the nonprofit he used to run, Operation Underground Railroad. She says she has proof, audio recordings, showing they lied to the public about saving children.
We have no idea where the girls are. We have no idea.
She also sued Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes, saying he intimidated her and tried to silence her.
Who do you report it to if the Attorney General is in the middle of it?
I'm Fox 13 investigative reporter Adam Herpetz, and tonight Suzanne explains why she dropped her lawsuit against the Attorney General and why he has yet to earn her trust.
Whenever there's a crisis and there's people are trying to help, I get contacted. Who should we donate to help this part of the world?
Long before women accused him of sexual assault, and long before the LDS Church criticized him for morally unacceptable behavior, Suzanne Whitehead says she was skeptical of Tim Ballard. She was skeptical of his fundraising tactics and his operations, because it always seemed to be centered around one person. She was also skeptical of the way OUR spent millions of dollars raised from people in Utah.
You can show up on your $1 million jet and then go ask around a bar and say, hey, I want a bunch of 12-year-old girls. And if those guys think that they're gonna get a ton of money from you, they're gonna find you some 12-year-old girls, whether they've been trafficked or not.
In 2016, she was working with a victim shelter in Nepal. One day, she says someone forwarded her an email from Operation Underground Railroad, trying to raise money with the story of a young girl at the shelter she partnered with. The shelter says the girl was never trafficked, never rescued, and had nothing to do with OUR.
My name was tied to things that weren't true. I love this girl that they had just lied about. It was her name and like parts of her story, but then it had been like sexed up with all this extra stuff, and it was just so bizarre.
Immediately, she says the email raised red flags, so she confronted the OUR team members in Nepal and started recording.
Wait a second, you can't do this. Like, what are you doing? You know you're lying. Why are you doing this to these people?
So they admitted it.
Yeah.
People that are writing these stories, I don't read them because I get frustrated.
The audio is not perfect, but listen to the man with the Australian accent, an OUR team member named Damien, who apologized for OUR's portrayal of the story. We're only identifying him by his first name, given his undercover line of work, but the recording shows he mostly agreed with Suzanne.
She wasn't trapped at all. She wasn't.
She wasn't trapped. Yeah, she wasn't. I know that.
Now the audio is part of a lawsuit against Tim Ballard and OUR. Her allegations include dishonest fundraising while Tim Ballard was in charge.
I'm a sex trafficking organization. I'm fighting sex trafficking, but here's a girl that wasn't trafficked, wasn't even saved by us, but this is the story I have for you.
Really sorry. With all my heart, I'm really, really sorry. I'm absolutely devastated. I'm heartbroken about that. I really genuinely am.
Tim has to know this is going on. He's your director. He's in charge. I know he knows that he's lying, and I know he knows that he's like making it seem you guys are rescuing people you're not.
The recording shows Damien was so upset with the nonprofit's fundraising that he repeatedly threatened to quit, but never did. 7 years later, OUR published a new video about him, touting his accomplishments.
It's been 8 years now, and I've got no intention of walking away. I can sit here and give you my grievances about OUR all day long, because I was quite open about it with OUR. I said I'm embarrassed to go back. We've been to Nepal 3 times now. We haven't done anything.
A spokesperson for OUR says the conversation may have been recorded illegally. They say the fundraising post never claimed OUR rescued the girl, but it did contain errors and violate policies, which is why they've sent a letter of apology to the shelter. OUR also said it has evolved. Tim Ballard is no longer affiliated with the nonprofit, and they've recently launched an audit to identify mistakes and prevent them from happening again.
I asked him, I'm like, if you've rescued so many people, why do you have to use one of ours? And no answer.
Years later, Suzanne repeatedly told her colleagues she does not trust OUR. She was vocal on social media. According to her complaint, the intimidation began in 2020, first with threats of a lawsuit.
They're too big, and they will destroy us.
Then phone calls from a high-level OUR supporter. Did he use those words, saying that you're a villain and that you hate children?
Yes, and I was really annoyed because I was like, how could they even do that?
The donor has not been named as a defendant in the lawsuit and hasn't responded to our request for comment.
Then Sean Reyes calls, and they have him, and I was like, that's it. Like, there's no one else. Like, I don't even have anyone I could go to. There's nobody else to go to. Who do you report it to if the Attorney General is in the middle of it?
According to her lawsuit, Reyes' intimidation was not as explicit. He said they should work together with OUR and referenced his connections to the Trump White House, which she thought might hold up her husband's pending immigration case from Syria. Now she's dropped her lawsuit against Reyes after listening to his apology, his public condemnation of Tim Ballard, and his promise to not seek re-election.
We didn't settle. Like, there was no exchange. He didn't give me money to be quiet. There was nothing that happened. It was just a conversation.
Do you think he's ashamed about his quote-unquote past friendship with Tim Ballard?
I don't think politicians like to say when they're ashamed. I think he should be ashamed. I would be embarrassed.
Did he seem embarrassed?
He seemed regretful. A lot of the stuff he said, I felt for him because if he really is being duped, that sucks.
OUR attorneys say they were trying to amicably resolve a dispute with Suzanne, which is not grounds for a lawsuit, so they filed a motion to dismiss. They also say Reyes was not under OUR's control or authorized to act on the nonprofit's behalf. His own campaign records show he was a member of OUR's advisory board. He was also a fundraiser.
I've sat on maybe over a dozen nonprofit boards during my career, and I know that there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of fraud, there's a lot of ego in the nonprofit world. I looked long and hard, and I could find nothing wrong.
Did Sean Reyes say that he's a victim as well?
He said that he didn't realize how they were using his name. It takes a lot more than one meeting for me to trust anyone, but I like giving people the benefit of the doubt. If I'm electing somebody to a position that's supposed to oversee a bunch of things that they don't know anything about, that is not a smart move.
Ballard and OUR are still listed as defendants, and Suzanne says if she finds evidence that Reyes was more involved than he says, she'll refile against him too. By the way, this civil suit is not the first time she's raised official concerns about OUR. She was also a witness in a criminal fraud investigation in 2020, but she says she doesn't know what ended up happening with that case. Reporting at the Capitol, Adam Herpetz, Fox 13 News, Utah.
In a statement to Fox 13 News, Reyes says that he supports Suzanne's efforts to combat human trafficking and that the evidence will continue to show he never engaged in threats or improper conduct.
Tim Ballard's attorney also released a statement saying the evidence shows he was focused on improving OUR's work in 2016. Now the plaintiff's, quote, demand for compensation for loss of self-esteem is actually taking resources away from protecting children from trafficking.